Morning.
Who the early birds are. Oh my gosh. Good morning. Look who's here. Roy George. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm good. Just waking up. Well, I woke up at 3:30 actually, to be honest with you. I just came back from the gym, so I didn't dress up for you guys. I'm sorry, Scott. I didn't shower yet, buddy. Yeah. Hey Scott, take a safe off mute so you can introduce yourself to Roy. Roy's the new face of the
Scott
tribe.
Pullman, if Jenny wants to poke her head over.
Yeah.
No, she doesn't want to do that.
What?
I'm in Michigan. It's freezing cold here right now. Um, I was a high school science teacher and resigned in May. So now I'm doing real estate and finance stuff full time.
Awesome. Awesome.
100%. We got more people showing up. They're coming in a little late, but we actually, you guys are early. You're overachievers,
Great.
obviously.
Always early.
Yeah.
Can't miss them.
I just got back from working out too. But I've already showered and I'm ready to leave the house.
Oh, we'll check you out. All right, Mr. Overachiever, showered already. Um, well, I'm gonna let Sandy talk about what she's doing, but we now have to be at the gym at 5 in the morning, and she has to do something this morning that takes a little longer. So I stayed here and worked out, and she went. So she might show up. She's not back yet, but she has to take care of things. She's very disciplined. So she's like, I gotta do it. So let's see if
Nice.
she gets here. But it's good seeing you, man. How's the weather in Florida?
It's actually, I mean, it's cold for Miami. It's
Mm.
raining, 64 to 70. So in Miami, that equals bubble jacket. Um,
Okay, yeah, I mean that's like whatever. Everybody else
I,
is freezing.
I remember the first year when I saw that, I thought everybody was insane. Now, 10 years later, I'm like, okay, I'm cold too.
Yeah, yeah, I get it. It's one of those things your blood thins out, right? And it's like you're just 60s are like cold to you. Yeah.
It's not the same. I lived in Newport Beach in California for 10 years and I never felt that way. It wasn't until this humidity with the drop temperatures that
Yeah,
I actually started to feel the cold.
yeah, I get it. Who else just joined? Who's that? I can't see.
Somebody on mute.
Yeah. That's-
It's Jackie Finelli.
Hey, Jackie, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Man, I haven't seen you. Thanks for responding yesterday. I was worried about you. I haven't seen you.
Bro, I was worried about me too.
Oh,
It
I'm
was
glad you're back. So good to
okay.
see you. Yeah, it's good to see you on your phone. I
I'm
guess.
switching over. I had to reset my password. I had to
Mm,
get into my Companions of War account.
mm.
But I'm moving over to my computer, so don't mind me hopping out and hopping back in. But I'm here.
Hey, we've talked about you're in a different space too. Looks like a different background.
Yeah, not since we talked. I mean, I've been here for a minute. I did kind of move some things around though,
Okay.
but
Okay. See, I pay attention to those things. It's a whole different background. See, I noticed.
you do.
Yeah. So, well, we got some people I'm sure are going to show up. We usually start around this time. So, Roy, thanks for joining. I've invited everybody. Again, this sometimes goes to like Scott. What would you say? Maybe between it can go with. I think one time we had it like at 20 at one point, and then it goes from like 6 to 5 to set because it's all optional. It's not like a mandatory thing. What my
And people
goal
from
is to be more focused on like not leadership per se, but just the subconscious mind and how we operate and how we fool ourselves into doing things that we think are good, but we realize they're not when we're around so other people that are comfortable sharing what we see. And so it's more about a self-discovery through peers. And so it's just concepts of whatever's happening globally, whatever happens, through the world of interaction, conflicts. Like last week, we had a huge discussion about something I had tried, which was methylene blue, because of the person that I listen to on a continual basis about one thing, which is mind science. He focuses on the brain and how the brain operates. And I leverage a lot of his material and I would say I lean into it a lot. I don't agree with everything because I don't know 100% of what he's saying is true, but I like some of the analogies he uses and stuff like that. So he said he used methylene blue. So I automatically just went ahead and said, oh, let me try that, see what that feels like. And I had Scott gave me the stink eye, along with Joey, another person, because of their science background and the study of methylene blue. But the purpose of that conversation was how we believe people based off our affinity towards them and how the power of affinity or trust dictates reality, regardless if it makes sense or not. And so it was more about that. Does that make sense? So I still want to kind of lean into that because I don't know if you guys, Scott, you're not on LinkedIn a lot, but I shared the conversation we had last week. And hey, Milani, good to see you. I shared the conversation we had last week on LinkedIn, just a little snippet of it. And I don't know if you guys saw a guy that kind of came at me kind of like in a kind of aggressive way, talking about Chase Hughes and how he's a crook and just was really aggressive, almost very alpha-like about it. And I said, well, I thank you for sharing your belief because that's exactly my point. The whole point was how we believe people and we just lean into it. And he said, got mad because it's not a belief, it's just a fact. And I'm like, well, thank you for your non-belief and your fact. It got a little, and so I took it offline. I said, look, I'm not going to go back and forth with you, but you're more than welcome to have a dialogue about beliefs. And he goes, well, you want me to talk about Chase? I'm like, I don't have that kind of energy. I'm not going to go there. But so I just wanted to kind of lean into that again because it goes back to leadership, goes back to getting people to follow you, getting people to believe in you, getting people to work with you, trust you. All those things goes back into an affinity towards some part of you that makes them feel comfortable. So I wanted to get your opinion about that and stuff. And did you guys, Scott, do you find, honestly, did you lose a sense of trust in me in some sense of form because I went and said I tried methylene blue? Because we had a huge discussion about that.
No, not
Okay.
at all.
Okay.
And, I mean, I've got a tube, I think, of ivermectin in my closet from the old horse days. And I thought the other day when somebody started getting sick, I went, I wonder, you know.
You're talking about the Joe Rogan thing. Okay.
Jenny's, I don't know, Jenny just made some sort of comment from the sidelines here.
Hmm.
So no, I'm not sure. I mean, after I read that, like I said last week, that book on woo-woo,
Hmm.
maybe methylene blue's legit. I don't have any idea. Who knows what we're gonna find out there.
I
Yeah.
had a clinic prescribe methylene blue for me to take.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
take ivermectin every day.
It's funny you
But
said that.
Doc,
You just said
what,
that,
what
and I was just when I was trying to find studies on it, it was talking about the things that you described that you're going through. It talked about it could help that. And I was like, oh, but I didn't want to send it to you because of the conversation that happened. I didn't want to seem like a woo-woo guy. So I'm like, oh, let's just hold off and see what happens. But yeah.
when my mother was in labor with me, she was in the hospital, and they had an entire labor and delivery wing of women that were on alcohol drips to prolong labor or to delay labor. So just because somebody prescribes something doesn't mean that it's okay,
Right.
but it doesn't mean that I'm going to ignore it. I'll do my research.
Well, it goes back to what I was saying, you guys, and I want you guys, and by the way, guys, we got a couple more people here. Jackie, you know Roy and Roy George, right? You guys have met?
I believe so. Once or twice in a passing.
Yeah, okay. And then you got Mahalani. Mahalani, this is Roy George.
Hi. Hi, Roy. Hi, George. Or Roy George. I guess you probably get that a lot.
Roy, you're on mute still.
I actually get Boy George a lot.
Boy
Do you
George.
really?
I can see
I
that.
mean, what's a lot? I'm almost 50, so I would say a lot was half my life. Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
Well,
I am 50 and I have heard everything under the sun from a Hailani.
Except when you go to class and one of your best friends works in the office at high school and actually sings Karma Chameleon over the loudspeaker.
okay.
Oh,
That's cute. I got that. I never understood the words, but I always mumbled it because I figured that's what he was doing. But a good song. Roy, can you share real quick how we met? 'Cause-
How we met, yeah, actually, that's funny. We met by accident at a event hosted by NAMBA.
Mhm.
I believe that Delilah Ramos had, talked about you and I to each other at some point, and then we met at the gala that evening, 2.5, 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Um, I think you and Sandy were walking towards your table. I was walking the other direction. We stopped, we chatted for a little while, and that was our first meeting.
Yeah, yeah. And we got along and we've met since then. We've talked. I got to speak with your team. I mean, we've interacted. You were in Dallas. We actually caught up
Yeah.
with each other. And so I want you guys to come back so I can meet T and finally solidify because you met Sandy. So it's almost like I don't believe.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be in Dallas not too long from now. My wife is taking a class there, so we have to come into town. So we'll let you know when we're there.
Okay.
But yeah, you've been on my podcast, and uh, yeah, man, we've had a lot of good interactions over the last few years.
Yeah, I'm going to share that podcast you did. You inserted me in a piece of it, which I thank you for that. I think I'll share that today or tomorrow. But I have to figure out. I don't do on LinkedIn enough like I should. I coach a lot of people on doing LinkedIn, but I don't do it. So I'm still working on that. But I think I'm gonna get Opus Clip and a couple other things that help with editing because I do my own editing, which takes a lot of time, which is why I don't do it so much. But we'll do.
Opus is great for the scheduling piece and making sure your posts go out.
Yeah.
I've got a connection out overseas in the Philippines that we use for a lot of our editing
Okay.
and inexpensive,
Mhm.
really good. So if you've seen any of our content online, he's doing most of it.
Okay. Okay. We'll talk about that. So yeah, Jackie, did you raise your hand?
Yeah, I want to hear more about that editor, but you said you're going to talk about it. So
Yeah. I mean, you and I, Jackie, both are in the same boat, right? So we definitely need to um, maybe talk to Roy about that because this is one of the things that I struggle with. I just had interesting. You guys know I'm working with a company right now that I don't know if you know this, but I'm working with a company that's developing their sales, but I'm having problems with that whole concept because they're still in 1980s. And they think all their salespeople are just supposed to call people and send emails, and they're wondering why they're not getting any sales. And so when I get into social selling with them, and using LinkedIn, they don't have a drop down in their CRM to even share that people are doing those things. So it's been really interesting to see the interest business world not evolve to the new way of communicating, the way that I would say Gen Z does, and I find it very fascinating. So you guys might not have seen, I posted a thing on video on LinkedIn yesterday with Bruno. And Roy, you met Bruno. We talked about him. He's a Gen Z guy. He's made over $1 million selling coaching programs globally. He lives in Europe. He's made a lot of money, actually well over that. And so he's doing really well, but he's a Gen Zer and he's just on Instagram and TikTok and he's sold millions just coaching people on how to develop their own coaching program. And so I just did a thing with him I had an hour conversation with him, zipped it down to about 3 minutes or so. And basically he said something very fascinating about leadership. He says authenticity is the most important thing now. But I said, well, how do you make sure people don't just sell authenticity, like fake authenticity, because they're trying to be authentic, they're trying to sell themselves. And he was very clear about that. And then he talked about leaders, the difference between legacy and him is that his whole team, which he has a good team of people, he says, I don't tell them how to do it. I just tell them what I want and how they do it is up to them. I don't have a care how they go about it, as long as it's ethical, and I thought that was very fascinating because companies like we're used to working with have protocols. And I think, Scott, you can say this as a teacher, you have protocols, things you had to do, had to get it done a certain way. And Joey, you're in the mortgage industry, and I know you're in a very, I worked for USA, you worked for, the same personalities, very rigid, certain checklists you have to get done, certain things you have to do, clock in, clock out, all those kind of things are kind of going out the wayside when it comes to Gen Z companies. So I thought it was very fascinating to see how he operates. And so, and like you just said, Roy, you're using people overseas for a lot of your business because it's cost effective and they get things done a lot faster versus you don't have any protocols on them. You just say, get this done and they get it done. So I guess my question is, how do you guys feel leadership is shifting in this world? We'll get off the methylene blue thing because now Joey's here and I'll get ganged up with him and Scott. So, what do you guys think? Do you think leadership is shifting, or do you think it's going to be a rigid halt and it's just going to be a push until Gen Z molds into the way legacy leadership has constantly been done?
Yeah, Julian, I think you're going to see a blend in that. I watched my son, and he's been in an organization for 2.5 years now, and this organization is very much like the organization you're working with. They are a family owned. They've had the same executive leadership team for 25, 30 years. They are just, hey, everything it's working, so let's just keep doing it. And then you've got this young kid who's like, we could be doing so much better. and the frustration that he is in. But the interesting piece is there's places where he says we could be doing better is standard old school tactics, but just taking them and putting them in that fresh energy. It's almost like they've become rote in some things, so they're not focusing.
But Joey, let me ask you a question because here's what I got. My feedback yesterday as I was talking to the guy that asked me to do what I do. He was so honest, and we're become friends. He's a lot like
Yeah.
Roy. He's a lot like you, Roy. He's very, he looks at it from a holistic point of view. He's not very rigid, and he's not a corporate like jargonaut. He knows that there's lines that are gray, and he can see that the line is created by ego. If that makes sense, he sees that. Um, he said something to me so weird. At the same time, I almost took offense to it, but I appreciate it. He was like, I think he says, Julian, I think the problem is it's you're intimidating to some of the leaders. It's almost like they're so stuck in their way, but when you come and start saying things, it's almost like they can't do what you do. So in some ways, you become kind of like their enemy in a weird sort of way. And I had to reflect in my past, and I think that's been kind of my problem with corporate America. I come in with ideas and I'm a change agent. I want to see things from a change perspective. And when I start saying how we can do these changes, the people that created the process in its place at this moment sees it as a threat to their ego. Or I shouldn't say their ego, that's a strong word, a threat to their processes that they created, almost like their identity, I guess that's a safer way. Do you see that as that's kind of like, you're almost like a virus, like you're destroying the ship in lieu of the process you created to keep the ship running. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And Suha's here. Hey, Suha, good to see you. You're back. Hey, got to get. I was going to reach out to you today. I was really going to call you right now and wake you up. Thanks for being here. Good to see you. So right now, so what do you guys think? Any feedback about that? Do you think that the problem is the ego of human nature in the process of business?
Oh, 100%. The problem is always the ego in human nature, right? And it's interesting the point that he gave, where his son is. I've learned that it's not you, it's your environment. And what I mean by that is that everybody has their special skill set.
Wait, Jackie, you gotta wait for Joey's like scary clock to stop. Okay, go ahead.
Everybody has a special skill set, right? And I'll get a little spiritual on you here, especially because it's Martin Luther King Day yesterday, and he's a prime example of this. Like everybody has a skill set they come into the world with, that they have conversation before they get here with somebody. It says, this is going to be what you're interested in, right? People are interested in certain things for it's inside. So when you become who you are, you wind up in an environment that either embraces that or sees it as a threat to ego, right? And the environments that embrace it are the ones that can see the talent and see the uniqueness and make that puzzle piece work well for their machine. But I was shocked to learn the egos that exist behind large companies that say that they're for profit, but to your point of that very gray line, is driven completely by the ego of whoever's in a room. And it is shocking. So advice to your son out there, just like go work for that other company that is always saying, how do we one up it, right? Like that Disney mentality. Because the people that are stuck in their ways for 30 years are not going to get stuck out of their ways.
But isn't that every company though? If you think about it, and this is a really hard lesson, and I might say this, and I don't mind if you guys think it's kind of rude, but I said this on a podcast that you've never seen, this guy on YouTube, but I basically said I think most leaders are really just an employee. In some ways, they have to be an ambassador to the business. It's not their own company for the most part. The most leaders in companies, not all companies, but the ones that work for a company, are acting as if they're the creator of the company on I would say persona. But in all due respect, they're no different than the frontline employee who has to take a phone call. They're supposed to do what they're supposed to do and make sure it's done. And because of that, anything that separates that role has to be kind of vetted as a survival mechanism. Am I going to put myself in a jeopardy of being cast out not being part of a tribe or being an anomaly, or am I going to be an innovator and do something that might seem a little crazy or different? Because whatever is crazy or different, we try to shoot down. We see it in every movie. We don't understand what's coming out of space, so we just shoot at it. That's human nature, is to fight what we don't understand. So the quacky people become the anomaly and become the threat, even though they might, like to your point, Jackie, be helping bring ROI. And I see that. I can look at all the company, not all, but 90% of the companies I worked with. I see very clear, here's something that you're doing that's losing ROI, but you keep doing it because of the protocol, and that's how we do it. And if I bring it up, it's like the whole message of ROI is out the window. It's about the fact that it's kind of reverse, like it's gaslighting. We're not even talking about the business anymore. We're talking about something completely different. So I totally agree with you, but I think that's human nature. And I wanted to get your feelings of that. It might hurt, especially when people have leadership roles, Joy, like you're an employee. Basically, you're not an entrepreneur, but you have to answer to certain rules. Do you feel like there's certain rules you can't break as a leader, even though you see an opportunity there?
Always feel like there are certain rules that you can't break. And I would say that when I look at those, particularly right now as a new employee, I'm looking at things, to not necessarily looking at policy rules that I'll break. I'm looking at cultural norms that I don't want to break. Yeah. Yeah. That's one of those things. You want to step in, you don't want to come in like a bull in a china shop, but you do want to make sure that you are walking within a space so that you're gaining credibility to be able to move into those spaces.
That's a
There's
great point.
opportunity, but you're watching them and making sure, hey, where are the perceived boundaries on this?
Mhm.
So we know where to operate, and then we can begin to push.
Interesting enough, you got Scott, you're gonna say something. Sorry.
Yeah. Are the people in leadership, though, looking at the new employee and being willing to make changes? Because every time we hired somebody new, they come in with a fresh perspective.
Yep.
And like, maybe that's not good. That's not good. We should make some changes. And it's vital to listen to those new folks because we've been stuck in a rut for so long.
Listening to them, I agree. That's another conversation about how we label people, and we see that label and that becomes their extent of their experience or their abilities, right? That's the human nature too. That's really a bad thing, but we do it on a continual basis. And I find it very fascinating that we love outside thinkers when it comes to liking their post, or somebody who's known as an influencer comments something or makes a great, like a Gary V comment. Oh, I love that quote. But we go back to our jobs and we don't live that quote. And I think that's to your point. We need to listen to them, and we might listen to them, but how do we apply it is a very dangerous thing in the subconscious of ourselves. To Joey's point, there's a culture and there's a tribe. And if your tribe says you have to wear a black shirt, and all of a sudden you're saying, hey, there's a red shirt too that's really good. Everybody's going to look at you and say no, and that's going to make you feel threatened. And I think that's the challenge with corporate leadership. That's the challenge with corporate America, and that's the difference between the Gen Z, is that they are so against rules. Their focus is on the ROI, just the return of investment. How do we get what we want? And there is no rule. And like I said, I've seen those meetings are fascinating to me. There is no leader, there is no owner, there is shareholders. Everybody's a shareholder, and everybody gets a piece of the pie. Let's sit in a circle and figure out what's the best way to do this. And there's no job description. If the phone rings, the first person answers it. I mean, that hears it, answers it. That's to me, that's just it's a camaraderie of ownership. It's the difference between Star Trek and Star Wars. Darth Vader, this is how you do it, or I'll kill you, or being Spock and Captain Kirk, different, but living together and respecting those differences and learning through those differences. Does that make, is that's my, you like that, Joey, huh?
And I like that.
That was my was a guy that actually brought me into the company. He loved Star Wars, and I said I love Star Trek, and he asked me why, and I said because Star Trek is a great testament to how human nature should be, where you don't understand, but your goal is to understand so you can explore new universes. Um, Star Wars is about, we're trying to control your ability to expand. And we don't want, we want you to do it our way. And our way is our way or death. And and he loves Star Wars. And ironically, this company is all about dictatorship. You have to do it this way. And I kind of got in a tiff with him because I'm like, you'd have no drop downs on your own personal CRM you created, where you're saying the person's not doing their job because they're not doing Zoom calls where they're talking to people globally. A lot of people globally don't use Zoom. They use WhatsApp, they use Teams, they use Google, they use different things, and you can't track that. And so you're telling people they're not doing their job when they are doing their job with the tools that they need to use to talk to the world. And they said, well, no, they have to use Zoom. I said, well, that doesn't make any sense. The world doesn't all use Zoom. So, so that's where it gets a little convoluted. So anyway, I digress.
And I will tell you, yeah, just saying in Teams, you can't hear my clock. In Zoom, you can.
Yeah, there you go. I'll make sure I tell them that. So what's your thoughts? And Suha, I know you jumped in and Roy, please, you guys are, well, Suha, you were on for a little while. Mike's not here, which is a weird anomaly, guys. Wouldn't you agree? Have you talked to him, Joey?
I did not. I almost texted him this morning because I was going to be late,
Oh,
and
okay.
but I didn't.
Okay. Well, Suha and Roy, what do you guys think? Do you feel like I'm just saying a bunch of noise or, and Suha knows I get in the weeds sometimes, but that's just who I am. So thanks for respecting and appreciating it, Suha.
I guess I would start by saying I didn't hear the topic that we're discussing. So it sounds like it's about leadership and how some leaders either do it their way or, go the highway. Is that kind of the gist of the
Yeah, I
conversation?
mean, just with the world shifting so fast. Everybody's talking AI, everybody's talking business
Mhm.
models, a lot of mindset, motivation of team employees wanting to have more and blah blah, all the things.
Mhm. Yep.
And there's new ideas out there and there's new ways of doing things, but the process and protocols of companies could be improved upon. But it seems like it's a lot of talk and a lot of no doing, or a really long process to get something done when it really is a flip of the switch kind of thing. So just curious, do you think leadership is willing to move or is it more about survival because of their role as an employee just as much as anybody else?
I think it really depends on the leader and whether they have that innovative drive or, like you said, they feel they're an employee and they don't feel empowered to make the change. Obviously, as leaders, I think I heard Scott say, sometimes when you bring in new blood, that revitalizes your organization, and that's very, very true. We see that happening a lot with leaders who are in their kind of like mid to senior level. And when you bring in new blood into the organization and they start throwing these ideas, and I think that's where leaders have to be very careful because if you shut down those new ideas all the time, if all you're saying is no, 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 then those people are going to leave and go somewhere else where their ideas are heard and where they're valued. Because when you shut somebody down all the time, basically you're telling them their ideas are not valued. Their ideas are crap and they don't matter. And so finding that balance, obviously leaders want to make sure that they're hitting the bottom line, that they're in the black and all of that. But at the same time, you have to continue to innovate because the speed of change is incredible at this point. You know, I don't know if you guys saw the OpenAI CEO saying, within the end of the year, we're going to have agents working with real life humans by the end of the year.
Yeah.
That's a huge change.
Yeah.
And preparing your organization for something like that, if it truly does happen by the end of the year, is a significant challenge. How
Yeah.
do you bring in the change management? How do you upskill and reskill your employees? How do you make sure that that integration is going to be seamless and harmonious?
Yeah.
Hire Jackie Finelli. She handles all those
Yeah,
things. That's
that's
what
right.
she's an expert at.
Yeah, but here's,
Sorry, Sue.
it's
I
so
couldn't
cool.
help myself there, but you just set it up for me,
Yeah, that was a
girlfriend.
great setup.
That's good. That's
That's
good. That's
your meme.
exactly that's
I'll send you a
exactly what it
video of
is.
that, Jackie. I'll send where
Thanks.
she's saying that, and you say, "Hire Jackie Finelli," and then you can cut it off there. That's your commercial right there.
I love it.
I think it's awesome what you just said, but one of the things I want to add to that, Suha, is the importance of understanding how to respond to an idea, which we don't have leadership training for that. I mean, what you just said is so important. And you might tell you might even be on a podcast or even say that and people will say, you're right, we need to embrace ideas. But when they're in a meeting and a new person of the company says, well, I have an idea, or hey, what about this? And people, we don't do it that way. And they just move on. They just forgot that comment. And that's what I'm saying. We have a lot of knowledge, but we don't have a lot of wisdom. We don't apply the things we learn from a cerebral perspective. We don't apply it in our daily process. And so that's where I like to come in and say, wait, you know this, but how do you implement it in your activities? What are the behaviors that you need to be aware of in your daily life that's going to promote that? So instead of saying, I'm a leader that loves ideas, what does that look like on a daily basis? When you're talking to somebody what they did wrong or what they need to improve upon, did you ask, how are you doing it first? Let me see how you do it. And maybe it might be a better way. That encourages the idea versus saying, I need you to do this differently. And that's what I'm saying is that we don't really coach to that, just like AI. We talk about what AI can do, and then we go back and we handpick our emails or we handpick the way we've done it without really saying how do we implement it in our daily activity. So I agree, but I think there's a big gap there on how do you do that. And I think that's the difference I see in the business. But
Well, here is the gap. Like, you guys just all summarized it really well, right? Like Suha said it. How is the change management handled? How do you implement that? How do you get your humans to react? But then what you said in that wisdom that we forget, like, that is your senior level management. That's your leadership. That's your tried and true. We've been through these experiences, right? And I think that if you preface to new employees in the younger generation of, hey, we want your ideas, but we want them to integrate well with the manufacturing chain, that sets the tone for the way information gets presented, for the way employees think about that information that they're going to present, right? Like, I, if we have a manufacturing train that's making widgets and you want to just paint it purple, like, why, right? And like, yes, it might be better purple. People might feel better about it being purple than rusty, but like, that project doesn't really help our ROI, doesn't help. So come to me with something else. Come to me with how we improve the rust. Come to me with how we make it better functionally and appear better, right? So when you set up your employees to understand how they need to present things to you, it also lets your senior management not say no so much, because people say some wackadoo stuff coming in the door that have only worked for you for 2 weeks. Like,
yeah,
let's
you
be
got a
real
good
about
point.
that too.
You got a good point. The concept of, having an idea without having the backdrop of the full picture. It can, but I think that's also a danger too. Like, the real true story about the New York firefighters trying to move the truck underneath the bridge. They had the whole city blocked off, and the artery of that road was just destroyed because of truck was too high to go under the bridge and got stuck, and they were losing the foundation trying to move it. And the little kid came by and they kept ignoring. Was just take the air out of the tires, And they're like, "Oh, damn, we've been doing this for 15 hours trying to figure this out." And it's like, duh, let's just move some air out of the tire. So it was like no one thought of that because everybody had the engineers and all the minds around how to make sure this bridge doesn't lose its foundation moving this. And it goes back to, yeah, it might not be you need all of it, but to your point, I think one of the challenges I ask people is to always be willing to have test groups and try things out. Like I have begged this company to give me a test group, give me a tester, 7 people that I can test anything out against that process. That way we have more data, and it satisfies the brain around logic that you need to have to get buy-in to move forward with this. If I can get a tester and show a lift, then that gives us credence to say, let's move. Maybe we should have 2 sets of this and see which one at the end of the quarter gives us the best ROI. And that will be the thing that we make the norm. If you duplicate it by how many employees you have, that's going to give you a better outcome. So, but it's challenging to me to see that people don't want testers. They want security. And it goes back to my human nature of threat. We don't want to feel threatened. We don't want to feel the unknown. We want stability. And the challenge of stability is our detriment, because if we are looking for something that's stable, then we're going to get upset when it's not. And we're losing the sight of innovation. We're losing the sight of being able to be creative. We're losing the sight of the market is always shifting. The weather is always shifting. If you wear a jacket because it's cold today and that's safety for me, and it gets 110 degrees here, I'm going to be suffering, not the weather. I'm the one suffering. And I think that's what I'm trying to get companies to understand is it takes more than just your process. And so I think you're right, Jackie, but it's a double-edged sword. I think it goes both ways. Roy, you haven't said anything. I'm gonna force you to say something now.
Personally, I love to hear these opinions. So many years working in that environment where all of these thoughts are pertinent and visible and are our daily experiences, are not mine anymore. You know, in my geographic location, the group that I work with here are the ones that I see the most are 80% Gen Z, right? And it's an interesting dynamic to watch. They're exactly as you say, they're, no rules, let's break it, then we'll fix it. You know, let's just do whatever makes the most sense right now, no matter what, consequence may come. There's a lot of guidance to be given, but they want that free reign. I can tell you in some of my other locations and when I'm traveling and the age demo changes drastically, right? So Miami is the only space where I have that 80-20 Gen Z, everybody else. In every other location, it's Gen X that holds the largest employee population. And so they're very different, right? They're very, what are the rules first? And then I'll fit into that rule set versus this Miami group. And to be honest with you, the Miami group gives me the most ideas to implement across the board, no matter where I'm thinking about it. I run into freedom of thought in a different way than I run into in all of the other locations. And, 25 years or 24 years in corporate America. And I mean, I'm halfway to becoming a corporate America, which I'm kind of trying to stop and put the brakes on, right? I don't want that. I didn't want that. But that being said, sometimes it's all of the outer forces that are forcing you to become that. And so me being Gen X, right? I have that swing where sometimes I'm so aligned with the one or two millennials and the 20 Gen Zers. And then there are some times where I kind of have to fall this way to the Gen X thought process because I need to make sure something doesn't break or, they need to make sure something doesn't break because I don't want the consequence of it.
Yeah.
But you know, I I can see this situation from both sides. Now, I can tell you that, sitting in the C-suite for so long and dealing with people that I reported to, there is very little to no notion in that room or yearning in that room to want to get to uh what does Gen Y, Gen Z want, right? What do millennials, what do Gen Z want? That's not what that room is looking for. That room is absolutely looking for a couple of the statements that were said before. How do we stay in the black? How do we make that black explode to exponential numbers? And that's the only formal concern. Even having an HR person in there or someone else to kind of help guide it doesn't really do the trick. And going all the way back to the beginning of this, um, yes, you're intimidating. Not because I think you're intimidating, from speaking to you personally. No, but in that room where you have the 60 plus year old CEO and the people who've been in that space for X amount of time, they hear what you're saying and they see the resonance from Gen Z, millennials, and that's upsetting. You're taking away their shine because they're, drawn to you and your thought process versus being drawn to the leader that they want them to be drawn to. And something I've experienced personally a few times. So yeah, there is that piece, and I think that drives a lot of, or it may drive a wedge between someone that hires you and why they want you there versus what you actually achieve. And then it's kind of like, all right, listen, Julian's getting too into this where our staff is starting to create a divide amongst themselves because they want to, achieve these thoughts that Julian puts in their head, which may be great, but that boomer, that top end Gen X person can't align with it to make it work
Yeah.
or to get it to work.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I think it goes back to I think what Joy was saying. There's a line where there's a political nuance that you have to keep in mind. Your audience, know your audience, right? So to your point, though, it's hard to go in to say, "Hey, we want you to make change," and then just keep it the same though. It's almost like a square saying, "Hey, I want to be a circle, but don't cut any edges off." It's an oxymoron, but it is one of those natural like tendencies or tensions that takes hold. But to your point, you said something that's pretty powerful, and you guys heard that. He's around the Gen Zs give the most ideas, and I think it's really fascinating that if anybody were to be afraid of what's happening with AI is to first understand it, because once you understand something, it's not a fear. It's something that makes sense to you. So if you will jump out of a plane, if you knew how the parachute was folded, you knew the person that was doing it, you've seen it done over and over again, you've done it, every time you do it, you don't have the fear because you have an experience in it. And I think that's the challenge. And I am still fascinated with all the conferences I've seen happen, and they have people my age talking about AI when you got, 1,000 millionaire Gen Zers that are using it on different levels that are not in corporate. That's who should be invited to those conferences. Have those guys talk about it because they're talking from an experiential perspective, from a real ground root experience, not from a here's what I saw on YouTube and I'm converting it to my own process. I think there's a big difference there. And so that's why I had that interview with Bruno, because the whole long interview is pretty long, and we're going to do it again because it gets in the nitty gritty of the discovery of what he said was so fascinating. He's like, I have no idea what you're talking about when you say metaphysics or brain science. I knew that since birth. Because I've seen it. Everything I've watched is about how I think becomes my reality. And I was like, well, that only happened in the 80s with What the Bleep Do We Know, that became really popular. And then he was like, I don't even know what that movie is. But he grew up with this stuff. And so the way he thinks is different than the way you and I think. And so I think it's really fascinating to see that. So, all right, who's typing? So let's see.
I had something to say about that piece there. So yeah, I agree with you 100%. The stigma of Julian's delivering a presentation on AI detracts from the usage of it. You may not think so because we have open minds. I mean, the people on this phone probably think so broadly and are so open to things that this statement may not make sense to us until I explain it. But the reality is, when I get on stage and I talk about AI, and my company, we've been using it for almost 4 years. I didn't need to hire an outside source to help me. Why? Because they had an army of Gen Z people here, and they're crazy with it. They make most of the people that use AI look like they don't know what they're talking about. And these guys and girls, they just figure it out on their own. They can make it work in 20 different ways. I purchased a CRM tool not too long ago that came with an AI component. My team looked at that AI component, and within 90 days, we built our own and we got rid of the contract. And our AI flows without them,
Yeah.
right? And it just went to prove the fact. So the reason I say this statement is I have a younger person, a Gen Zer, who actually runs my mortgage division in Miami and the country, right? Um, when I get up on stage and I talk about AI in small groupings, the notion is always like that 50-year-old guy just went on Google and read something and doesn't know what's going on here. But when my younger counterpart in mortgage in my on my residential mortgage team gets on that stage, he does it differently. He doesn't talk about AI. He gets on stage, he does the prompts live, he does the work live, whether we're using ChatGPT or Opus or whatever else that allows us to clip in AI, and then he's proving it. So I get on the stage and I say to people, hey, X, Y, and Z, and get in contact with me, and 3 people contact us. He gets on stage and says, this is how I do it. Look.
Mhm.
And on the last meeting, 106 contacts within an hour of finishing that presentation.
Wow. I mean, that's what I mean. It's like to see that in action. So just, just to circle back, I want to see how to chime in. The thing is I want to bring up is that I have an AI company that wants to work with this company, and they're giving me 3 months free demo, and I can use up to 7 people. And the company's like, no, we don't want to do that. Like, okay, so all right, that's fine. But to your point, I love that you're trying that, you're sharing that. So I know you got to go soon. So you want to add some input on this? I mean, we're talking about business and AI, and this is a different conversation than we usually lean into, but it's needed for some reason. So let's just keep going there until it deviates. Suha, what's your thoughts?
No, like I said, I put it in the chat because we were talking about the leadership styles and how do we make sure that the next gen is being included. And the conversation on AI and younger generation, I think it's just like with agents, as we start to introduce them, we have to put guardrails and make sure that they are working within the confines, that they're not, going out and doing the wrong thing, making the wrong decisions. I think with new employees, you also want to kind of apply the same thing because they're new to your organization. So you have to, and I read an article on Harvard Business Review, and they refer to it as guardrail, as scaffolding, actually. So you build up the scaffolding so that you're giving them the space to do what they need to do and to fail, but you have the scaffolding up there to protect them and protect your organization. And as they gain experience, you start to remove that scaffolding and give them more, kind of like, you empower them to do more because now they've gained that experience and they know how to do it more. You're doing that with AI, and you should be doing that with your new employees as well, so that they know that they have the room to do what they want to do, but it is within that scaffolded environment that protects them and the organization as well.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. Guys, I like to go a little deeper than that. And I appreciate what you're saying, 1000%. What I wanted to focus on is the concept of safety and our subconscious not wanting to be the anomaly, because of that feeling of outcast is something that's deep rooted in us since childhood. You go to a new high school, the first thing you want to do is find how do I fit in, not how do I stand out. And I think that's part of our DNA in a tribe. Tribalism is a form of safety. If you don't have that tribalism, you're in danger, because an outcast is never accepted. And I think, to Joey's point and to your point, that scaffolding is tribalism to some extent. And, that's sometimes that tribalism is actually shaded by the concept of protocol. And I think it's really interesting. I'm looking at behavior every time I'm in a meeting and I see people, and the leader is the one that talks the most. And he says he's open to feedback, but when you go and sit in his office, he is nonstop talking and giving what he feels the vision is and what it should be. And I've never seen this person ask anybody their opinion. And he's so alpha that everybody just shuts up. And I'm trying to get him to see that. I'm like, I want you to see how people respond to you when you're in a room versus when you're out of the room. I'll tell you, to Roy's point, when I share that, I might be intimidating him because I'm trying to show him something. But if I do that, and now I'm saying, I guess you're right, Roy, is like I'm saying they're different around me than they are with you. I want you to see why. But he sees it as, oh, okay, they're responding to you. I don't like that. So it's really interesting. It's like this weird, like somebody once said, everybody goes to the dentist not to focus on the good teeth, but I want you to show me the bad teeth. And that's what a coach is. That's what a consultant is. Let me show you where the decay is. And you're going to hate me for it. It's going to hurt. But I think it goes back to that same concept. It's like, I'm here to tell you what's missing, not to tell you what's working to make you feel good. And I think that's where leaders could literally take a lesson in, is understand your own psyche. Know that your ego is always going to be the first reaction you have to anything that's hitting you as a leader. When you come in with your title as I'm the leader, you're already at a disadvantage to really learning. And I think that's what Roy is saying is the Gen Zs, they don't see it as leadership. They see it as expression. I'm just being my natural self. And I think we're seeing that shift in business. But I 100% agree with you. There's scaffolding. But then you got to ask, is it scaffolding because we couldn't fit the turkey in the oven, so we cut the legs off? Or is it because we just want to keep cutting the legs off the turkey? The oven's big enough now. We don't need to cut the legs off the turkey, but we make all these reasons behind why we do it. And I think that's what I was getting at. And so I wanted you guys to think about that. And it goes back to child parenting, goes back to relationships. I mean, sometimes we don't want to face the discomfort of being wrong, or the discomfort of seeing like we're not in control or we don't have all the answers. And I think that's where I feel like the real lesson comes with leadership. But I appreciate what you're saying. And Milani, what's your thoughts? Because you have kids, and do you see how this relates to family? Bye, Smile. Bye, Sue. I see you. It's good to see you. It really is good to see you. Just take care of yourself. Keep an eye on you. Okay. What do you think, Mahalani? Because how does this relate to family and stuff?
It doesn't really in my family. I mean, my girls don't really do anything with it as of yet. My husband's work uses it a lot, for certain things here and there.
Yeah.
I use a lot in my work. Um, but I don't know. I don't really have an opinion here or there with it. I mean, I'm hearing y'all talk and I'm hearing all the young kids and stuff. But with my business, I have a hard time hiring young kids because they don't want to work. So they want to take the easy way out.
Yeah, that's why they want that AI.
Like, bingo. You just said it. My husband has one of his jobs, because he has many, just because he's a 1%er. One of his jobs is teaching master courses for aviation. And some of the reports he gets back are all AI driven.
Right there. Like she just said it. Her husband teaches master courses, right? And he can spot that that's AI right away because he's teaching a master course. I am an automation architect. I work with AI and automation is my world. I can spot bullshit like that. I get squirrely about AI because it messes my stuff up all the time. I don't like to use it. I mean, I certainly do for recipes and cooking and sending emails that I'm kind of angry and don't want to send it the way that I sound right now. But in real, like, you become a master at how to make that thing work for you and your brain, not like how to do things for you. And that's what our new generation wants to do, right? They want to learn how to use AI to literally do everything. There's people out there getting rich quick, you know, make an AI, do their YouTubes, all this stuff. But the people that really, really gain traction in business are the ones that learn how to use that as the tool for their brain and not to replace their brain. And to circle all the way back, full circle moment, those egos that are driving all of the this is how we do it are also driving the AI conversations. And let me tell you how many people call me and want to have all of these sci-fi chats about what AI can do for them, which are real. I shouldn't say sci-fi. They're real. They're real conversations. But to them, they're just fantasies. Because to your point, they're afraid to implement any of it. They can't really understand it. And their ego kind of just shuts down. So there's a lot of leadership cultural change that has to happen before AI really takes its rightful place in business.
Yeah, well, on the neuroscience level, you hit on something really, and it goes back to my meeting with Bruno, is that authenticity is easily defined in our gut. We pick up genuinity and we can tell instinctively when something is inauthentic. And that's where I like to teach that part of that. And to your point, Scott, it isn't woo-woo anymore. Science has proven that there is a energetic vibration of authenticity that is felt through people's conversations, even their typing, their posts, all those things are pretty much picked up. And to your point, Jackie, yeah, and I mean we're inundated with AI now, so it's its own personality basically. You can see it coming. It's almost like I won't call it a demon. It's a spirit inside a person's like information that they're giving. It's like, oh, that's the spirit of AI right there. You know, you can pick it up, and you're picking up this vibe that's not genuine because it comes from something that's not from their own heart or from their own brain. It's something they've attached to themselves. And it's really interesting you said that because this is not going to go away. But just like Elvis, people trying to stop him, all it does is enforce it. The more you try to fight it, it's just going to make it bigger, and I think it's just going to happen where we have to be intentional about what we're saying and be able to put our own guardrails up about what we want to bring into our lives. A lot of people fear it's going to take away jobs, and yeah, it's going to take away jobs. I mean, everything does. I mean, from the industrial age, from the farming age to the warehouse age to the machinery. Things happen and things are going to change the society, but new jobs are going to be created, new things are going to happen, and new discovery is going to happen. So I think it's very fascinating what's happening, but to your, I'm to be just to circle back, I'm transparent about where my journey is going with this whole thing. Is like to Roy's point, I'm in a quandary of like this seems to be a repetitive cycle. And it's almost like I got to figure out, is corporate really a place that is ready for, and I hate to sound, I'm not trying to sound arrogant, but ready for me because I want to get to that subconscious level on the business level. I want to get to the psychology or the behaviors around what we do and improve upon those. Because if you improve the behavior, then that is the root, the nucleus of what you're trying to change. If you don't change the behavior, all you're doing is putting a checklist together. And you can't, I can give you a checklist on how to fly a plane, but it doesn't mean you're actually going to feel comfortable doing it. So I just want to get to the root. I want people to, and that is seems to be it goes against a corporate um, way of life, if you will. I'm the anomaly in the tribe. So it's definitely a interesting space right now for me. So thank you for letting me circle that back to that. So keep that in mind. Got any ideas? Maybe I should just become a yoga teacher and live on the beach and do some YouTube videos. I could do that. I can't stretch, but I can tell you that you should stretch. So I'm not very flexible, but I can tell you you need to be flexible. So,
Julian, I would tell you that if that's actually a thought you're having, and you're thinking about where do I fit in, you know, when I was at Citi 2 decades ago, um, that's a large, global conglomerate. Um, that company always was looking for the you, right? Now, it might not trickle all the way down to employees that we're looking at, but at that, top level, um, this kind of training is utilized often, right? So when I was coming up at Citi, um, myself, Brad, Jane, a bunch of people who are now all super high up. Well, Jane is their CEO now, but you know, that group of people always looked for, coaches and services just like the ones you provide. I got a lot of amazing training about emotional intelligence when I was there at that level, right? That's where I first discovered Daniel Goleman. That's where I first discovered, Primal Leadership, which was one of my favorite books and still is today. Um, I sometimes I think it's you've got to be at the massive companies to find where you fit in because the mediums and the little ones, there might be somebody there who resonates with what you're saying, but it's hard to deliver to the troops.
yeah. Yeah, so true. And to your point, the big companies use people like Joe Dispenza. They use MIT's neuroscience training and leadership. They use these things. And to your point, it's like the smaller mid. But working with the third largest internet company globally. So you would think they're pretty. I would think they would be, but they're not. So it's pretty fascinating. But yeah, I appreciate you guys being my Dr. Phil for a minute. Don't send me a bill, but that's definitely I appreciate it. So this, but I want us to think about our own behavior, like our own subconscious, like where we put the brakes on, where we have our own mindsets, where we stop things, and where does it come from? It usually comes from survival mechanism, a sense of fear or a sense of I need to get. And I think that's where, to Roy's point, this person needs to get authority. He needs to get people to respect him or something like that, or fear of failing or fear of being discovered. Any of those things. That's usually what happens in everything that we're reacting to. So just something to think about this week, and for especially those who are leading people or even working with people. Scott, I know you work with some pretty interesting people when it comes to investments and talking to them about, these doors that you're working with. Joey, I know what you go through. I mean, but you've transitioned, you've hopped, in and navigated through that company very well. You can write a book on that and just, how you've transitioned from different leadership roles and stuff. I would love for you to kind of one day like assess the personality and where the trends are in the culture versus where are the anomalies. I think that'd be really cool.
It's about to say it's been a journey, and now I'm next week I get to step out and meet the membership of my new organization for the first time, and a lot of these are appointed regulators. That's going to be a different space. That's going to be a really different space, and I'm really excited about that.
Wow, that's going to be interesting. It's like meeting a bunch of IRS agents.
Indeed,
Ooh, it's like, have fun.
commissioners.
Have fun with that. I remember going to dinner with a bunch of HR people and I said a joke and no one laughed. I'm like, guys, you're off the clock. Come on. It was like, relax, So it's funny. So have fun with that. So, but I appreciate you guys. So anyway, we had Roy, it's your first time. So anyway, we sometimes we get on a spiritual conversation, sometimes we get on business, sometimes we get on personal. One person can bring up something about something they're going through, and then we'll all chime in and tell them get over it and slap them around verbally, or we just have a good time talking about different things. We usually have Mike on. Now, Mike's kind of like one of the foundations of the group because he usually has these one-liners that are just great one-liners that just kind of resonate at the end. But he's not here today. And I don't know why. So I don't know if I upset him or not, but I have to find out. And so he didn't respond to my text. I did text him when we were talking, so he might have slept in or something. Who knows?
Find out if he's okay.
Yeah, I'm sure he's okay. Joey, you keep in touch with him, and Jason. There's a whole clan of people that reach out to him all day long. So
Yeah, I'll check on him later.
yeah, and so I really appreciate you guys. Hope you guys can make it next week. I did talk to Sunila, the one in Sri Lanka. She's been having a hard time getting here because of stuff in her family. She'll probably share next week. She said she'll probably share, but she's a very well-known coach and works with the royalty out there in Sri Lanka. But yeah, she might have something to share next week. So we might get on more of just for warn you guys, more of a mindset and not spirituality, but just more of the psychology of the brain kind of thing next week, if that's okay with you guys. Okay. And Sandy, I don't know if she was supposed to be here today. She might have something to share with you guys next week where you guys might want to talk to her about that. So, real quick, I only have no minutes left. If you haven't joined school yet, please do. I'm trying to build something with that. It's going to take some time, but just sign up as free. I made sure I got the free link. If you don't have the free link, let me know. Jason, Joey, I sent it to you, didn't I?
Yep. Yeah, I signed up. I should be on there now.
Okay, and George, you got it. So you'll get notifications, but you're going to see some of these videos we have. If you guys want anything you said today, like Jack, if you want it, let me know. I can edit that and send it to you. You can use it for your, for LinkedIn and whatnot. Roy, if you see something you liked, if you like what you said, you want me to send it to you, I can send it to you. You can use it for video, anything like that. If you guys want to start leveraging stuff we talk about, okay?
I would love it. That sounds great. It was a great call. Thanks.
I appreciate it. And if you have something you want to put online on school, if you want to give to each other, you can post it in there. I can put it in there. Now, if you want other people to buy it, you can put it on there as well. And you can charge for whatever you want. It will go straight to your checking account, but I can give it to you. You can send that link to people and they can buy it from there and they can get it and you can get paid for it. Okay? Oh, that's a scary, I don't like scary movies, and that reminds me of a scary movie. Every time I hear that thing, dude, serious, it's a trigger. But all right.
It gets pretty noisy in the house. There's several of them.
I'm scared of that. That's why I haven't picked up my alcohol.
You need to come over and get it. You can experience it firsthand, man.
Yeah. All right, buddy. All right, guys. I'll see you later. Thanks for joining. Have a good week.
Have a great week.
Have a good day, guys.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.